Good afternoon. It's Lee Cassidy from Tactile Technology with our new session, and I've not put my lights on. I do apologise. I'm not as well organised as I normally are for these things. So we're going to do a session every weekday at 12:30 to 12:45, and the idea is to focus on actually delivering cybersecurity information, but in plain English, so something that you can understand and doesn't make it too complicated, for the common man. I did mention it last week in another session we're doing that a lot of people treat cybersecurity like another language. It's a bit like Klingon, so not very pleasant sounding, and no one understands it at all. But as a small business, it's really important that you understand how cybersecurity can affect your business. So, how can the hackers get in? How can they exploit you, both financially? Taking your data and also potentially risking your reputation. And there's some really big issues out there, and it's changing all the time. It's really important that we do understand as business owners what cybersecurity issues there are and how we can actually protect our business better. So the idea today was to actually go through NIST. So NIST is the National Institute for Standards and Technology, and it's a framework that was developed by NIST in the US for businesses in the US to be able to ensure that they were protected to a reasonable level. And it's not too complicated if you look at it, from a framework perspective, but a lot of people are not really explaining it very well. So what I wanted to do is just do a little presentation just to show you a little bit about what NIST is about. So let's start off with the basics of NIST. So NIST is made up of 5 functions. So each of the functions is important, and beneath each one of those are what we call categories, subcategories, and then there's some informational resources for each one of them. So it breaks it down into subcomponents. But we start off with identify. The idea with identify is to identify some of the key attributes and key pieces within your business that we need to understand if we're going to go forward and create some kind of protection for that business from a cybersecurity perspective. The first thing is asset management. What have we got that we need to protect? So what number of desktop computers, laptops, or other devices that we use to run our business, where our end users utilize those computing resources to be able to run our business? How many server infrastructures do we have? How many assets do we have that are, doing some form of protection, such as firewall devices? And what about cloud services? Are we using some kind of SaaS-based cloud service like Office 365 to do our email? Do we utilize it for file sharing using OneDrive? So understanding all of the assets that we've got, but then looking at our current business environment. So how do we deliver our business to others? What are the components? How does it fit together? So we're building up a picture of what our business looks like and the component parts of it. We also then look at governance. So what governance have we got in place at the moment? How do we control what we do? What process and procedures are already in place? And how can we manage it from a cybersecurity perspective to ensure that we've got governance from the IT and security side of things? The next thing is do a risk assessment. So once we've identified all the key assets, what we need to do is actually look at the risk of each one of them. One asset might be that we retain customer information, and it's a part of what we do that we retain that information, we utilize it regularly. Where is that information about our customers held? How secure is it? What is the risk if someone actually was to breach our defenses and get hold of that information? Do we hold things like credit card data for these people? That could be even more of an impact if they actually got there, so the risk is much higher. So for each of those assets and that business environment, we're going to look at the risk. So we're going to work our way through about the risk of each one of them. And at the end of it, we should have a prioritized list of the key risks that we've got within our business, in line with the cybersecurity threat for the business. Then what we've got to do is look at our risk management. So how much of a risk are we, prepared to take, and which areas are we prepared to take risk in? We need to make sure that we focus on areas that are going to be major impact. What will stop us, delivering our business to our customers. Whatever it is, whether that's service or product, what will stop us actually being in business? We need to have that at the top of the list to protect against that particular issue. If we look at cybersecurity, it could be many different things. It could be, theft of data. It could be encryption of files from a ransomware attack, and also a denial of service type activity. So we need to look at those risks and which are the highest risks to us and what we can do about them. And again, it's also down to our appetite for risk. What are we prepared to accept from a risk perspective? So that's the identify. So looking at all the assets, looking at the business environment, setting up some governance and looking what governance is in place at the moment, and then looking through the risks and then our attitude to risk for them. The next piece is the protect side. So how do we, control access to, our systems? How do we control users' access to their desktops, their other devices? What about access to web-based services that we deliver that based on equipment we provided in our data center, in our co-location facility, or even something that's cloud delivered? How do we control access to it? Password, multi-form factor authentication using text messages or an authenticator device, or even making it simple that it pops up on the mobile phone of the end user to say, is this you that's trying to get in? Do you want to authorize access? And be able to click a tick or an X if it's not us trying to get in there. So how do we control access, to all of our infrastructure that we want to get to? Next thing is awareness. So we need to ensure that our end users are aware and are trained to understand what an attack looks like. What will appear on our desktop, what will appear within our antivirus or our endpoint detection piece if there is some kind of breach going on our machine. What does look like a suspicious email? I put a post out today that something that's recently happening to a lot of people is getting what we called email thread hijacking. So someone actually, in the middle of a thread of email, they take control of someone's desktop and they send an email to someone who's in that chain, and they actually trust it because it's part of a chain of emails between a number of people that have been bouncing backwards and forwards over a period of time. So they don't, they're not suspicious to it. It's not an email they've just received on its own with nothing else. It's part of that thread of emails we've been talking about. And awareness training is one of the key things for us to understand what looks different. What looks different from a behavioral perspective? What looks different from, the person who's sending the email? How would they normally speak in an email? Does it look different, to what's been done before? Depending on, the type of attack we're talking about. But also awareness of not putting passwords and usernames into willy-nilly boxes that appear on our screens at times as well. We also need to look at data security. How do we protect that data? How do we ensure that people in the outside world can't access that data directly? How are we going to ensure it's protected? What level of encryption are we going to utilize, depending on where that data resides as well? One of the areas we've seen with a lot of people around ransomware attacks is that the actual hackers will actually look for your backups. So we'll actually go through and look for backup files, and they're quite commonly named by the different software platforms with a specific format. So they'll look for those, and actually they'll either delete or encrypt those first before they attack you, because they don't want you to have a simple way to recover. So data security is really key in protecting not only the data that's within our environment, but also things like our backup snapshots as well. Next is information protection. How we, protecting the information that we've got in there. So all of our end user details, all the information about our employees, HR type information. So all of the information that we've got within our business, how do we protect that as well? And again, we need to have a regime in place to protect that. Next, we look at the detect side, because it's pointless having all this infrastructure in place when we don't actually know we're actually being breached. And we've seen over a number of years, a lot of large organizations didn't actually know they were breached, and they didn't know for much longer afterwards, maybe 6 to 12 months. There was the issue with solar winds that happened about 12 to 18 months ago. The majority of the people that were infected by that particular piece of malware through an update within SolarWinds didn't know about it until at least 6 months after it'd been deployed, because most hackers won't actually deploy some software and use it straight away. They want to wait a while for you to get used to it so it looks like it's normal, that piece of software in the background, so they don't create a lot of noise. But the key things to detect are looking for anomalies and events that are not normal. Yeah, looking for an amount of data that's been used on a network that's not normal for that particular time of day of week. Looking for specific things that we don't normally do, or a particular user behavior is different. That allows us to understand there's something going on, and also a particular piece of software that's been downloaded and installed, which we'd not normally have in our normal set of software utilized by our end users. Also, we're looking at security monitoring, but this is real-time monitoring. So all the time looking to see what's happening and actually identify anything that happens with our endpoints, so our desktops, our laptops, our mobile devices, but also the network itself. So we've got to think inside now within our network, not just on the outside and the firewall protecting us. It's what's happening indoors. It's no point having the best burglar alarm in the world, but actually inviting someone in because you've clicked on a link or something else, and they can walk straight through in without setting the alarm off. We've got to understand what's happening inside. What behavioural things are happening, what anomalies can we see in events we can see on that network or the endpoints, and also specific detection processes that we can implement. And there are many we can organise depending on the type of software that's deployed to protect an organisation. Next, we've got our response. How do we respond to it? And the key things here is, one, having a plan to respond, because if we don't have a plan, how are we going to do it? We don't know what to do without a plan. So we need to understand what our plan is if we need to respond to some kind of breach, some data loss, and actually deal with it at that time. But one of the key things is communication. We need to communicate internally and potentially externally with our customers and also our partners, because a breach of our infrastructure could also create a breach to one of our partners if we're interconnected with them. And this is becoming a big problem with a lot of organizations where they're moving down the route of this digital transformation, where majority infrastructure is electronic and digital, using some form of software and communications, that actually attacking one organization A, allows them access into organization B. And in some cases, they actually look to research the partners of a particular target they've got to find a soft way in, via a third party. And very few organizations at the moment are actually looking at how they actually vet one of their partners to be able to do this. And finally, what's our mitigation plan? What we're going to do to mitigate against this issue. Then finally, what we're looking at is, how do we recover? So again, we need to have a recovery plan. One, we've responded to the issue, the breach, we've dealt with that. How do we recover? Do we roll back? What do we do to do that? How do we communicate that recovery? But also, we look at improvements each time. So every time we have any issue, we need to look at improvements. How can we ensure that doesn't happen the next time? So quite a few things within that NIST framework, but it is pretty straightforward. The idea is just giving you layers of protection. So understanding what you've got and the risk levels you've got with those, how you're going to protect against any kind of cybersecurity threat for that infrastructure you've identified, and looking at your risk level, the amount of risk you're prepared to take in each of these areas, looking at a way that you can actually detect that you've been attacked, how you can respond to it, and then how you can recover. So a really straightforward way of protecting your business, and a simple way to deter cyber security issues in your business. So hopefully that's been of interest. And just let you know the kind of things we're doing later this week. We've got a a couple more sessions coming on. So tomorrow, what we're going to do is go through the 10 steps, and this is the National Cybersecurity Centre's National Security 10 steps. So there's 10 particular steps that the UK government, through the National Cybersecurity Centre's organisation, focus on UK business protecting them. And I'm going to go through all 10 of those steps tomorrow so you can understand what those key steps are. On Wednesday, we've got a guest. We've got Pete Rosinski joining us from Assured Technical, and we're going to talk through Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus, so you can understand what these certification processes look like and what value they are to your business. Then on Thursday, we've got Pete Rosinski back again, and we're going to talk about the ASME governance, which is a very similar framework to the ISO 27001 security framework. So you can actually ensure that your business, especially if you're a service-led business, is as secure as you can be. We're going to talk about ISME governance and how that benefits an organization. But we're also going to look at holistic security assessments as well, and how you can actually protect your business both physically as well as electronically using that mechanism. And finally, on Friday, we're going to start going into each one of those 10 steps that we talked about. We're talking about tomorrow. So going through those 10 steps over the next couple of weeks and touching on each area of that. One of them being data protection, so backup and recovery scenarios, and all the things. The 10th step is looking at home workers and also mobile workers, which has not really been thought about, but the way we work at the moment, it's really important that we have some kind of policy to protect home workers and mobile workers, because it's become a part of our everyday life now. Hopefully that's been of use, going through NIST. Join me tomorrow and we'll be talking through the 10 steps from the National Cyber Security Centre and how you can protect your business better. Thank you very much. And also, we've had a couple of notes. We've had Mike Nevin say he actually seems to have lost connection. Don't know if anybody else had any problems, but I don't seem to have any issues here. We also had a message from Caitlin Spears who said hi. So, hi, Caitlin. Hopefully, it was of use to you, and hopefully, you can join me tomorrow. Thank you very much.